Age of Transitions.
You're listening to the Age of Transitions. I'm your host, Aaron Franz, coming at you live this Friday night, January 22nd, 2021. Live every Friday night from the facilities of Ocelli.com, 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time. Here in California, it's 7 p.m. So thank you for joining us. Of course, the website for this podcast is theageoftransitions.com. Got links to it. Subscribe. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's all over the place. So subscribe, write up a review if you get time. That helps out a lot. And if you want to help support the show, got a Patreon. So join the Patreon. I just posted a new Patreon bonus podcast episode this past week. I haven't posted the clip, so it might have gotten lost by some people. But if you're a Patreon subscriber, you should see it there and give that a listen. Got a special bonus podcast episode every month for people who support there. So thank you, everybody, for that. Also have copies of Revolve, Man's Scientific Rise to Godhood, available at theageoftransitions.com. Tonight, live show as always, so you can call in, have a guest, so you can call in and join the conversation with our guest, ask a question. The call-in number is 319-527-5016. You can also get a hold of Chuck, charles.ocelli on Skype. So send Chuck a message on Skype, and then he'll bring you on into the conversation. That's charles.ocelli, or the phone number 319-527-5016. Also, before we get any further, ocelli.com has a Patreon too, so show your love over there. Keep the network going, and send a donation or a Patreon there. So thank you very much for all of your support. So tonight on the show, we have someone who's actually an old friend of mine, a schoolmate. We went to uni together, as they say, across the pond. We were friends, roommates, schoolmates. It's great to have him on the show. And he now has a podcast of his own. It's called Pattern Stalker. So, of course, we'll be talking about Pattern Stalker tonight. But I want to welcome to the show Rocky Jones. Rocky, how you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's great. I mean, it's going to be fun just having you on the show. And
yeah, I had no idea you've been doing this.
Yeah, I sprung this on you like kind of quick. Like it was just a couple of days ago. Like, hey, you want to come on?
Yeah, it's like legit, man. This is awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm totally new to the podcast world and all this stuff, so it's really cool.
Have you gotten any like other interview requests or any other podcasters talking to you yet?
No, not yet, man. Yeah, not yet. Yeah, I just kind of threw myself into it. So so you're going to break me in tonight, I guess.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you said yes, and I'm glad you said yes to the spur of the moment sort of thing I threw at you. So I appreciate it a lot. And why don't we, at the head of this, why don't you just give an intro to the listeners so that they know who Rocky Jones is? Who are you? And what do you do?
Yeah. Okay. We'll see. Well, my name is Rocky. That is my real name, not a nickname. I was born and raised in the boonies in southeastern Ohio. I am just turned 39, but I look like I'm about 24 though. And let's see. I live currently in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For my profession, I work for a large corporate fashion company out here in the Midwest. And I'm an art director, so I oversee men's and the active apparel for the company here. And for my side hustle, I'm a certified life coach. So I think by the last time we saw each other, Franz, I was out in LA, and I was going to like a workshop out there.
Yeah.
That was all.
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how this whole thing started getting started, was back then.
So that's
yeah.
when you started. That's when the idea for the podcast started. Is when you kind of came out for the conference. Was that the sort of seed of the Pattern Stalker show and all that? Is that what's going on?
Yeah. Like it was moving in that direction. Like it was about 2 years ago, because I had my father had passed in probably, let's see here, right after. So it was about a year. Well, no, yeah, it was right around the time my dad passed. I think the time I saw you, my dad was basically on his deathbed. Like he passed in the end of June, and I saw you. It was in March, April timeframe. So, but it was expected because he had a long battle with cancer for about 13 years. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's when probably a year even prior to that, I would argue about 3 years ago is when I started thinking about potentially doing a podcast or something. I knew I wanted something. I knew I needed to do something meaningful. I feel like I wasn't getting that from my job. Like I really enjoy what I do. I'm outside of like doing like the management stuff at work. I'm also very much involved in creating the art as well, and we do a lot of patterns. So for my role in particular, I do a lot of plaids, which is a really interesting, unique, niche kind of role. But I'm like a plaid designer, and hence, Pattern Stalker was sort of born because I'm like, it's just not only like am I just doing like patterns in that way, but it's also now applying it into like psychology and patterns and generation. Patterns and things. So yeah, that's how it's kind of started. All
right. And you've got a focus. Correct me if I'm wrong, but your focus is finding other creatives, people working in the creative field, and helping them succeed. Is that correct?
Yeah, for like the life coaching stuff, like it's been more of that. Like it's more of most of the people that I interact with in my sort of network are people who are in the creative field, right? So naturally, most of the people I end up coaching are just through like word of mouth or within that field. And I think let's see here how I can kind of tie this back into here. Since I've been doing the podcast since it launched, and it's only been out for a few weeks, so I've only got 2 episodes up now. They're released every Sunday night. But the first season that I'm doing on the show, basically the show is about self-discovery and breaking the patterns of generational trauma. So the first season is very much focused on like my family, like my immediate family. So the first episode is an interview I'm doing with my mom. And basically, the show will definitely manifest into other creatives that I've already interviewed. I just haven't put it out yet. Again, I wanted to kind of focus on the foundation, which was interviewing my family, because I kind of want to show people how to do the work. I guess I'm a big believer in leading by example, and how to kind of just kind of do it, how to have those uncomfortable conversations, especially with your parents, because they shape a whole lot of your world and your behaviors and things like that at a very early age. So you want to know what's keeping you stuck, or what's tripping you up. That's a really good place to start.
All right, yeah. So podcast, you say at the start, a podcast about self-discovery. And you're asking the question, why is it that we're always judging ourselves and others?
Yeah.
And then, so I know I've listened to both of the episodes you put out so far, and they're your autobiography. It's you interviewing your mother and telling the story of your family's story. So So I suppose the idea of the podcast is you're saying it's about self-discovery. So that's what you're undertaking for yourself as the host of the show. Is that what's going on?
Yeah. And again, like if I what I kind of learned as I kind of went through, let's see here. So let me back it up here so I can kind of put it in context so it makes a bit more sense. Last time I saw you about 2 years ago, I attended this workshop. I did like an 8-week online course that was about entrepreneurship, but it was taught with a trauma and attachment informed approach. So before I even got to that point, I was just learning more about entrepreneurship, and through the journey of learning about entrepreneurship, you have to become pretty like self-aware like in the process, because you got to understand like what are you good at and just what do you suck at. It's like you have to delegate, right? You can't just only do like the art, but you have to do the accounting and everything else. You know what I mean? Like you have to wear many hats. So you learn pretty quick. Again, like you become very self-aware in the process. So through that process, it sort of kickstarted this whole journey of my self-discovery, because I started understanding a lot of my perfectionism, procrastination, issues with like, I don't know, you get really obsessed with stupid shit like Words with Friends or like fantasy football. Like I was just getting like so sucked in and like, and I'm just not even realizing that
I shouldn't have picked Donovan McNabb as my quarterback this year.
Yeah, like,
what was I thinking?
It's wild, man. Like, because I have a family. I have, I'm married and I've got 2 kids. And at this time, my oldest was like 3 years old. So, as you know, Franz, as being a dad, like it's a game changer. So they're just watching you and learning from you, right? And I started realizing, again through the journey of like entrepreneurship, and then taking a step further, I really wanted to kind of figure this stuff out, because I'm like, I don't want to pass this down to my kids. Like, I realized like when my dad, when it was there at the end, I just had an epiphany. I was like, fuck, I don't have the relationship with him that I wanted. We weren't that close. He was awesome. He's a great dad. And I don't, the whole point is, for the show, and what I want to kind of point out is it's not to judge or to blame. It's just to understand. This whole journey is just about understanding, because you can understand it.
Yeah.
And then you have an opportunity to do something about it or to redirect it. And, but yeah, my dad was super, emotionally neglectful. I think a lot of it is a product of that time period of when he was raised. He was born in late 50s, and, very traditional kind of, family where, he works, and actually my mom ended up working like 2 jobs. So not so traditional in that sense, but again, the way my dad grew up was very much traditional. Like his dad worked and his mom stayed home, raised the kids, and they had like 6, 6 of them all together, right? So big families. And sorry, go ahead.
No, I know what you mean, like the traditional, not traditional, because surely your father's upbringing, and I'll just say my memories of your dad are really good. Like I only met him a few times, but he was always it was always cool to like hang out with him for like the short amount of times that I would. So I have fond memories of your dad. But I know what you're saying. He had this traditional sort of, I guess you'd say, conservative mentality, where back in yesteryear you could live off of the income from one person, but then fast forward to when we were young, that was no longer the norm. So I mean, traditional, I'd say it was very much traditional, because it was just following the trajectory of what everybody had to do at the time. Because it wasn't just your family like that. It's common. So he wasn't alone there. So it's interesting, like there's even like a sociological aspect to your show with like, telling the story of the rural poor is very much what's going on there too.
100%. Yeah. Cause you've listened to both episodes. So we go into depth about that. My mom, gosh, man, they made like $3.35 an hour.
Yeah.
And she worked 2 jobs. He worked in the coal mines for about 10 years, got laid off, and he had eventually work at the local press where she was at, and again he was making the same amount too. So again, this is without, like, my mom, she dropped out of high school, so no high school diploma. And again, we lived in a very rural area. The closest town, like actual legit, like populated town, was Cambridge, which you've been to.
Oh yeah. Sure have.
And Cambridge, yeah. So if you went there, you travel an extra, 20, 25 minutes to make it into Cambridge from where we lived at, and you can make a little bit more. So her next job was in Cambridge, at a packaging place, she was making like $4.10 an hour, which she was saying at the time that was like a big deal. Yeah. So this is like mid 80s. I was born in 81, and this was about when I was about 5 or 6 years old. So yeah, about the mid 80s there. It's wild, man. It's I think it's a common kind of thing, like you're saying. I think it's just culturally
very common. Yeah. Not uncommon whatsoever. All too common. But yeah, it's the format you've chosen to go with. I've seen on other podcasts. I always enjoy it because it's very immersive kind of thing. Like the son interviews his mother, and it's just like, oh, this is interesting. I feel like there's always someone, I mean, like that conversation being recorded is there's always like such an interesting dynamic to that, and it's very kind of inviting. So that's the entirety of the first 2 episodes is that, so that listeners can expect that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And going back to your original question, kind of when you open up with the podcast, and I say, do you ever wonder why care so much about what other people think, and then why we judge ourselves and others? So when I first learned about attachment theory, which was through this course I took, and then once I started understanding about trauma, it was like, holy shit, man. It's like fucking, it explains so much. I highly recommend anybody listening, if you really want to understand yourself, like look into attachment theory. John Bowlby, psychologist back in the late 60s, I think, came up with this, and Mary Ainsworth sort of took it a bit further, and they studied a lot of the relationships between infants, and their attachment figures. Their mothers or fathers are the main caretakers. And they basically came out with there's 4 different attachment styles, and your attachments are nothing but how you sort of relate to things. And these can be like, how you relate to money, how you relate to social media, how do you relate to friends, etc. Right? You name it. And you have, based off the first 7 years of your life, when your brain is in full sort of like development, you're highly influenced based off of those attachments to mostly primarily your mother, but again, whoever else is your caretaker at that time. And even the first few months, you're completely dependent on your caretaker for survival. If you don't get fed, you die, right?
Yeah.
So within those first few months, that they're super critical on how you as the parent are showing up, for like your baby. For instance, there's 4 different styles. There's a secure attachment, there's an anxious attachment, there's avoidant attachment, and there's disorganized attachment. And I won't go into much depth here, but just to kind of hit some highlights on it. Secure attachment is what you want. Secure attachment looks like for instance, you're okay with like giving money away, and you're okay like receiving money, and you're okay for asking for money. You have no issue with that, right? Secure attachment typically is sort of formed through a parent being completely attuned with your emotional needs. So if I'm an infant and I cry, my parents consistently came to my aid, and they were very in tune with what it is that I was trying to communicate to them. And I got my needs met. So that's a secure attachment. That's what you want. An anxious attachment, if you think about it, people who are highly anxious, the way that they calm themselves down typically is through making sure externally everybody else is okay. So if you're okay, then I can be okay, right? So if that happens, the way that's kind of formed when it comes with parents is, for instance, if my mom was under high stress, and if I was crying out for help, attention, or if I needed something, and if she had to kind of calm herself first, like make sure everybody else is okay with whatever was going on with her, then she could tend to my needs. Or if she tended to my needs and it was very inconsistent. So if she was super in tune, or if there was times like she was in the room and preoccupied and wasn't able to tend to those needs, the inconsistency creates the anxiety, right? Because the anxiety is nothing but uncertainty. Okay. So the avoidant one comes from when there's a lot more kind of neglect, when you're not getting your needs met at all. So you have to sort of do it on your own. So what that looks like as an adult, that would be somebody like, there's like, if they get into a situation and they need help, but they rather just do it themselves because they're like, fuck it, like this is just going to be easier if I do it myself. I don't need anybody else. It's super, super hard for them to trust other people or rely on anybody. That's like really scary thing. And usually, again, that goes back to your attachment model, avoidant, which is, again, is like nobody was there for you. So that becomes, your reality. Like I got to do this all on my own because nobody was there for me, So that's a story that's kind of written. And lastly is a disorganized attachment, which is more of like a come here, go away. So people who are more like that, where it's very sort of like, you're like walking on eggshells when you're around them. And usually that comes from your main source of love and, attention and getting your needs met is typically through your mom or your father, like whoever the main caretaker was at that time. If that person is your source of love, they're also become your source of pain. So say a parent who can be very like loving, but at the same time, like very like violent towards you. Like, so if you cry, like when you're a baby, they would yell at you to shut up. They act like get super stressed out and they're very sort of aggressive back, or even a lot of times it comes to like abuse. So it's very kind of like two sort of extremes, right? So that's basically the four kind of styles. And so how I kind of, once I learned about this, it was a big game changer for me, because then I became aware of my own behaviors and where they were kind of rooted in, like where was the root cause of like my, personal traumas and et cetera.
Okay.
And then I realized for the podcast, I was like, well, this goes back to childhood. Like anytime anybody goes to therapy, it all goes back to childhood, right? And, because what is created is called your internal working model, which is basically your blueprint. So it's like a lens or a filter. So however you sort of experience the world, you kind of run it through this filter back to this sort of inner dialogue that you have. And but again, I thought with the podcast, I'm like, other people need to know about this. I'm like, this is so helpful. It explains so much. And even if people just don't really, fan of like therapy, or that just the idea of that just seems like really like, intimidating or not, I don't know. Like, so this, I thought, well, at least if I can like, it's kind of like this thing I learned in entrepreneurship is, sell them what they want, but give them what they need. So if I can deliver something that's very useful and of value, but through story form, like through a podcast, then I can feel good about that. I feel like,
Okay. So all right. So the podcast is going to be a series of interviews where you're interviewing your mother, and then eventually, I suppose, on the show, are you going to start psychoanalyzing yourself and using this attachment theory and doing that's what's. Oh, and by the way, you're getting a lot of people in the chat room at nochili.com are like, yeah, attachment theory, and they're just singing the praises of it. Like, yeah, I learned about that. That's one of the best things I've learned in the past few years. So you've got some attachment theory fans here.
Hell yes. That is amazing. Thank you for like reaching out. Yeah, that is awesome, man. It is, dude, it's another level. I can't say enough about it, man. Then I started learning about polyvagal theory, started learning about the nervous system, like real like nerdy shit. But dude, it's legit, man. It's great.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go on. I'm assuming it's going to be a series of interviews, and then you're going to start going like, okay, now you know my story. Now I'm going to tell you.
Yeah. Totally. There's many layers to it. So I wanted to start with my mom as the first guest. That's sort of the foundation of me. If you can listen to my mom, you can hear her story. Which I know you've listened to it, but for people who haven't, like my mom was, 16, she dropped out of high school. She got pregnant at 16, got in this relationship with this guy who was like 5 years older than her. Very abusive relationship. She had my brother, got pregnant, had my brother like a year later. And then he went to prison. And once he got out, he was chasing my mom and my grandmother. And I guess at this time I was born. My mom had met my dad at this point. And he ended up getting this car accident, chasing them. And basically the car flipped over, it landed on him, crushed him, killed him instantly. I have a brother, so that was his real dad. And so we have different dads, but we grew up in the same household. So my brother's actually been an addict, for a good 15 plus years. So again, since we grew up down in, Southeast Ohio, right near, West Virginia, we're about, 20, 25 minutes, from West Virginia, from the border there. He, got hooked on opioids, so the big opioid crisis. My brother is as a product of that. Worked, had a good job laying carpet. He started his own business. Got injured. Went to the doctor, and he got hooked on the painkillers, basically. And he, let's see here. So he's got like 4 kids. And my mom and dad ended up adopting them, when my dad had gotten cancer like a few years prior to that. So I will be interviewing my brother as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going through the whole sort of thing. Like, I started with my mom. I've already interviewed my uncle, Rocky. Rocky is his nickname. His real name is Victor, but I was named after him.
Got it.
He's the only living uncle I have on my mom's side. She had 5 brothers. And he was the only one that beat his addiction. He was an alcoholic. Oof. And he spent 30 years sober. But I have a whole line. Every single one of my mom's side, they were all alcoholics. Except maybe my Uncle Nelson too. It's questionable. I don't think he was though, but he smoked a lot too though. But he had a massive heart attack at 45. So most of all the men in my family, they've all passed by in their 60s. You know what I mean? They haven't really lived much past that. So I've already interviewed my Aunt Claire, which is my Uncle Rocky's wife. She's also, grew up in that sort of area. She's got an insane story too about like addiction, like with her mom, and hasn't taken care of them. and her father, and I'll be interviewing my cousin Jeff, who also stayed with my family, and used to babysit us. He was a few years older than us, than my brother and I. Well, actually, more than a few years. I think he's like 50, so he's 11 years older than me. So he was also his dad was, his dad's Uncle Kenny, who just passed recently, and Jeff didn't feel safe being there at their house, and so he would stay with us for a bit. So he was a huge part of me making it out. And I don't know if you remember, Franz. I lived with him a few times when I moved out of our house at 2215, and I went to Dublin, Ohio.
Oh,
that's who I live with.
Okay.
So he was a huge part of me making it up out of there. Because he let me stay there rent free, and because I ended up going 6 years into college, because I had no help, no financial help, I don't know, my mom just didn't know what to do. I was a first generation college student, so there was just not a lot of support. So I thought it'd be really good to interview my cousin Jeff too, because super, super grateful for him.
Mm-hmm.
But I figured if I start there, then I'll expand it into other friends, people that I've met along this whole journey, that are kind of have been in similar situations, and they've kind of worked through things too. So I kind of want to investigate more, like what have they done that's worked. My really, really close friend, he just moved to Portland, because his girlfriend, she's a pharmacist who studies the effects of psilocybin in treatment for depression, anxiety, PTSD, etc. So
yeah,
he on his interview, we go pretty deep on talking about psychedelics and whatnot, and which I'm a huge advocate of psychedelics. I think that's I think it's happening now, but I think it's going to be more prevalent in the future for as an option for treating depression. I mean, it's had a profound effect on me personally too. So sorry man, I'm jumping all over the place.
No. That's how we do things on this show, so no need to apologize for that. I know Chuck is it. Chuck, you want to come in here?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to ask a question, or actually now two, because one thing I heard missing from part of your equation regarding attachments is the concept that, perceptions of the outside world beginning in utero that, that are part of the I forget which, there's two types of memory. There's a memory you can recall, and then there's a memory you can't recall, and you don't form that until after you're born. So I was curious if you took that into account in your equations, one, and the second question is about psilocybin after you answer that.
Yeah. So the only thing that I know that I've learned about, I don't know if you guys heard about epigenetics. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's one of those fields that I'm highly interested in, because it gets well away from biological determinism as a thought process, and I think it is not only positive but extremely solid, cutting edge science that needs to be explored a lot more, because it is not a simple matter of, well, here's your genetic disposition, therefore you are.
Yes.
It's never been that simple. It's not nature versus nurture. It is an interplay between the two. And I find that entire field extremely relevant and necessary, especially at this time. But the idea that some of these concepts, people think they're having intuitions, gut feelings, whatnot, are really based on some of the biochemical reactions, their connection to the outside world as expressed through the connection to their mother in utero.
Yes.
And in trying to explore my own story, I find that there is extremely relevant facts about that do formulate a great deal of how one perceives the outside world really for the rest of their lives. So I was curious. I didn't hear that in your discussion to begin with.
Yeah. Like it's really interesting because I in a lot of ways, I'm figuring out like how in the hell can I help my brother? How can I break the patterns that's happened with my family? I don't claim to have any sort of like any like substance addictions, right? But my brother, I mean, it's just wrecked. It's wrecked him. It's again, like he's got 4 kids that my mom and dad ended up raising, and epigenetics is a really good explanation for how things even happened with him. I know biologically we have different fathers. We have the same mom though, but there's also the nurturing factor too. My mom, she was softer with me. I was the youngest, so the baby of the family, and that comes across in an interview. Like you'll hear how she's very comfortable with, very safe with me, and again, very nurturing. My brother, she's really hard on. She's again a product of the tough love and system, and she was much harder on him. I think when you hear the interview, you'll discover that there's a lot of she felt rejected a lot as a mom because he didn't really necessarily warm to her when he was born. And my grandparents, I discovered as I was doing my editing, and I text her, I'm like, Mom, it sounds like Pap and Grandma, because you were so young, and it sounds like they kind of just took over parenting for you and sort of shamed you. And she was like, yeah, they totally did.
Well, you were the one who was born when she was 16, right?
19. I was born second.
Oh, you were second. Okay. I misunderstood that.
No. Yeah.
The reason why I bring that up is because, there are transitional things that occur during, teenage life.
Yeah.
I mean, the idea that he was in utero with her at 60. Well, here we go. I can tell you parallel, right? My mother was impregnated at 15, and I was born when she was 16. But she was addicted to substances. So, this actually has created a weird window where the only thing I ever fell into was a medically induced addiction to opioids, which lasted me 7 years and was very destructive. And I do trace it back to exactly that I was dealing with. And she was also abused, and she was also an abusive individual who was not only abusing drugs, but really abusive to many people in general. And I think the stressful circumstances that I was being carried in have really remarkably shaped my perceptions. And, again, if 3 years later she's feeling a bit more secured, less threatened and everything else, the entire biochemical stew that's being fed to you through her bloodstream is totally different. I mean, regardless of the genetic packages from your different fathers, even.
Yes. Yeah.
And my father was also kind of a disastrous individual at the time I was conceived, and he committed suicide when I was 4. And my sister, who had a totally different upbringing, different mothers, is functionally extremely different from me. Even though, again, we share the, one parent in common, we're very, very different people. Our perceptions of the world are extremely different. And I think it's because her mother had a more well-off family, took care of her. Yeah. And mine was more of a juvenile delinquent. I mean, both of my parents they got married. They both needed the permission from their probation officers to get married. Kind of circumstance. And he was 20 and she was 16. So, here we go.
Yeah.
Very similar, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So no, but I just want to make sure that you had covered that, because I think that's a fascinating, and by the way, not something that everybody has agreed upon regarding the science, but that it is worthy of consideration. So I was hoping that you had gone into that. And, when examining that, did you interview your mother and talk about the circumstances of each of your situations in utero? That's one question. And then the next thing is, and the last thing I'm going to ask about is because I do suffer from some pretty severe PTSD, and I have been exploring the concept of, psilocybin therapeutically. And it makes so much more sense than most of what the big pharmaceutical companies want to shove down the throat of somebody like me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've tried to treat it with cannabis, and it's not entirely effective. It does allow me to get sleep sometimes, but that is the best use I can with cannabis. I'm wondering about how much you've explored this concept of the reset of psilocybin as well, because regardless of your in utero experience and your life experiences, it does seem to me as though it can be a revolutionary thing when properly administered. So these are my questions and comments, and thanks, Aaron, for letting me have a little bit of time with your guest, because I think these are relevant points, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing. That is pretty wild story. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels between your background there, it's to mine in a lot of ways. So to answer your question, I did talk at length with my mom about this. It was very clear with my brother. Again, she was 15 when she got pregnant. She had him at 16, but she was also in this highly abusive relationship, physically, mentally, emotionally. She had been as far as I don't think she had any alcohol problems, but she definitely was smoking cigarettes by the age of 12 or 13, pretty heavily. So, I do believe a lot of the trauma that she had experienced during that time period has definitely affected my brother. Because once I learned about epigenetics, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. This would explain a lot of things. Even in the biological factor, because my brother, again, down the line of my mom's maiden name's Cameron. So along that line, all her brothers being alcoholics, but my pap wasn't, though, nor my grandma, but my pap's dad was. He was alcoholic, because my pap actually dropped out of school in 8th grade at 12 years old, because his father was an alcoholic, and he dropped out of school to go work to get him out of the situation, take care of his mom and his brother and sister, which is insane. Think about 12 years old. So there is a line of it, but I also think definitely the trauma aspect of it could give a good explanation. I think in my case, back to your question. When she met my dad is nicest dude ever. Very chill, polar opposite from the relationship that she came from. So I think by the time that I was, brought on board, she was in a much, safer environment, very loving and caring, and just a different sort of experience for her. So I do think that, because I was born, relatively 3 years later. So her situation was much different than what's prior. So, I definitely think that has a lot of influence. I think for your second question in regards to psilocybin, so actually in PTSD in particular, so MDMA is on the ballot, they're being approved. That's been the biggest one that they've done trial in clinics. There's clinics, I think, out in California. So if you've heard of MAPS at all, which is in Santa Cruz, I believe, they're the pioneers, leading the charge on getting psychedelics to become, legalized.
Yeah.
And MDMA back in the 80s was actually designed from therapists and whatnot in that world in treatment of depression and anxiety. It just got adopted into, pop culture and became, a threat. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the book called Stealing Fire by Jamie Wheel and Stephen Kotler.
That sounds familiar. It's about ecstasy, and it's about what is it?
Yeah, Flow state, yeah, it's really good. They basically they do a lot of studying of like flow states. So Stephen Kotler, he used to be like a photographer for like some of these like kind of extreme sport athletes, and he was like studying a link that was going on between a lot of these athletes. Like, why were they able to kind of achieve certain things in their performance and optimize it than other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then his sort of work is all based on flow state. So that's basically what he came to the conclusion of, is like these guys are able to kind of access extreme focus and get into a flow state that allows them to to perform at this level. So, and then Jamie Wheel, and I think with this work that he was doing, I think might have been more maybe in the psychedelic realm potentially, but they basically teamed up together and they found out, in Silicon Valley, with like microdosing and things like that, a lot of those guys out there were using that in accordance with solving complex problems and whatnot as a tool. And the book sort of outlines the kind of history of this whole kind of renaissance that was happening with psychedelics and why certain drugs like Ritalin and things are legal. But the makeup of them, the amphetamines and things like that, it's just like, it's insane. It's sort of like, government and things, they just want to control everything, right? It's psychedelics when they became criminalized back in the 70s, the Nixon era. Like a lot of it had to do with people not wanting to go to the war. There was just this sort of awakening kind of revolution that was happening, and they just shut the door right on it. And so they cover a lot of this in the book, and how like certain things like smart drugs that when they were a thing, like why are these things used for performance? Why are they legal? Like Adderall and things like that. But then you have these other drugs like psychedelics that are safe, they're non-toxic. It's psilocybin in particular is a natural substance. Like, why are these things criminalized? And when alcohol and things like that that is legal is statistically more chances of causing death and problems, etc. Than in comparison. So for you, Chuck, MDMA is definitely the one. Psilocybin also, I'm not sure in accordance with like PTSD in particular, but just in treatment of depression. I think a lot of the studies I've heard about, you can read more about this. Tim Ferriss, if you've ever heard of him, he's a big advocate for this, and he's donated like a couple $1 million to the Johns Hopkins University because they built a psychedelic research center, like a 17.5 privately funded psychedelic research center, where they can actually conduct a lot of these studies. And with psilocybin in particular, they found a really high success rate in treating of cigarette addiction. But it could work for PTSD. I'm not sure.
I think it's good. I think it's nice to see the psilocybin coming into the conversation for mainstream use and medical use for one reason, to like kind of take it out of that weird zone where it can now be taken seriously and prescribed to people and used with the intention of using it for healing and having like a kind of respect for it, because with the criminalization of it, it's just, kids are going to get a hold of it and they're basically just going to do it for kicks. And then you get people using it like every weekend and just kind of like goofing around. And then to me, I feel like that's a problem in and of itself. It's like that becomes an abuse. It becomes an abuse of that substance. So you can definitely abuse it, I think. But I also believe, like you're saying, like, yeah, of course it can be therapeutic too. And it's good to see that things seem to be going in a direction where I think that's what's going to happen. Like, oh, okay, we're going to use this in a certain, intentional way, and it's gonna have, positive health effects, like mental health effects.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I believe in it 100%. Just even for my personal experience and even just people close to me who have done it, it's just been a game changer. It's sort of like, I kind of refer to it as like the Mike Tyson. It's like, it's so powerful and profound of an experience. You only need, like, you can have just like one session.
Yeah.
Even like guided, which I highly recommend. You're with somebody that, and again, with the intention of just going inward, because what's happening, if you guys haven't experienced it for yourself, but on a physiologically level, what's happening is your brain is just, it's communicating in a way that it typically doesn't. You almost revert back to like childlike state of mind, where if you look at, like, say, like a heat map, it's all, lights up, like, because all those neural pathways are just now open, and they're in different, between the left and right hemisphere, like different parts that don't communicate are now communicating, right? Mm-hmm. And so it basically kind of opens up, the subconscious and even unconscious mind. And that's where you start having these like aha moments, like certain things just sort of get put together. And it's basically whatever you're sort of avoiding or whatever you've experienced that you've kind of tucked away in your subconscious mind, like it comes to the surface, and then you're forced to deal with it. Like it's not pleasant per se. Like it can be in the right state, but there's a lot of almost, it's like waves, right? There's just like these really strong sensations, and then it kind of becomes less, and it's an array of different emotions, crying, happiness, to sometimes anger. You know what I mean? There's just it's just a very I don't know. It's like waves, like water. It just comes and goes, and you have to sort of you got to lean into it. And the interesting thing was how this even ties to trauma. Like what I've learned about, there's a great book about this called The Body Keeps a Score. And basically traumatic experiences, they're stored in the body. When you think of the nervous system, how, you have this thing called your vagus nerve that goes from like your brain down into your body. And when you have those experiences, that's where they're kind of embedded. And so if you have different ailments or back pains or things like that, some of that most of the time is linked to some sort of emotional event, or some sort of trauma. Like I guess for you, Chuck, you know more about this with your experience, like even just being diagnosed with PTSD, it's very much probably in your body. There's some sort of response when you get triggered that kind of flares.
It's taken on several forms over the years. And there is a biological response, which is entirely involuntary, that has nothing to do with the conscious mind. And the studies that I've seen on the psilocybin reaction, because as I'm stating in the chat room, when attempting to use the synthetic form, like your typical like LSD tabs, that you can get, very, very dangerous. I got a lot of serious darkness in there that I get engulfed in. And never having tried to use the natural element as a therapeutic, but having used it before, it doesn't have the same characteristics. And from what I'm understanding, it is based on the chemical makeup here, and there is something unique to the psilocybin.
Yes.
And the PTSD, look, I've carried that nearly 40 years. I'm 48. Okay. And therefore it has gone through a great many changes. It's not a static thing, but it was remarkable to me to see finally somebody not say that it's under control, but that they actually felt free of it. And that's one of those things that if you legitimately have it, and it's, by the way, an overused terminology, I believe, at this point. Yes. But if you legitimately have it, there is a uniqueness to it that I think lacks description. And but I heard somebody basically describe that thing as best I could understand it, and state that after 2 sessions with the psilocybin, it was gone.
Yes. Yeah.
That is something I cannot even imagine. So there's something to that. And yes, everything that is a psychological and therefore creates a biochemical reaction has an influence on the genetic switches that get turned off, turned on, and even mutilated in, different ways. I mean, mutilated's kind of a rough term, but altered in different ways and their presentation becomes altered. So again, epigenetics, a solid field that really requires a lot more exploration. And but the relative just interesting facts that have been found out in the very basic ground level of that science, to me, is probably exactly the thing that could deal with I don't know, countless things that we think of as afflictions on the planet, not just the psychological, but the various physical presentations and predilections for things. And again, biological determinism as a thought process to me is very negative and very much linked to eugenics. And I refuse to accept that. Because look, you were talking about the alcohol and drug addiction thing, in family lines. See, here we go in defiance again. I only spent 7 years addicted, but throughout my family, I can find alcoholics and drug addicts left and right. And by the way, some people kept it more quiet back in the old days. So you don't even necessarily know all of your family history.
No.
Great grandpa could have been a complete lush, but nobody wanted to talk about it.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
So, anyways, I want to let you go because I know you're going to run out of time in about 4 minutes here, Aaron, because we started a little late.
Yeah.
You got about 3-4 minutes left, and I'm sorry to again dominate time, but I wanted to answer it since you kind of brought me back into it. Like, I don't know about your experience. Well, sure, I just gave it to you.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Aaron. Go ahead.
Sounds good. I think with the time that we have left, Rocky, let's make sure that people know. Again, the podcast is Pattern Stalker is the title. Yep. But why don't you let them know where it is, and then anything else attached to it, any sort of social media you have, and all that, let them know.
Yeah. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I'm also I'm on Simplecast. So I think simplecast.com/Pattern Stalker. I can double check that, but you can find me. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. If you don't do that, you can hit me up at rocky@patternstalker.com. I'm more than happy to talk more about this stuff. Anybody wants to kind of deep dive on that, anybody just wants to, some advice on something, whatever, or just shoot the shit, whatever. I'm super into that. So you can hit me up there. Again, I release every Sunday night about 6 o'clock Eastern time. I do a release. So the next one's going to be the final interview with my mom, part 3.
All right. Cool. Sounds good, Rocky. I'm going to keep listening, of course. I hope people will listen to
Appreciate that, man.
Pattern Stalker. And then you're going to be hanging out in the next hour for Uncle the Podcast, right? You're hanging on?
Yes. Yep. I will be there.
Okay,
yeah, definitely.
Great. Nice. All right. So that's going to be a fun time. Anybody listening here live Friday night on Ocelli.com, stick around. Uncle the Podcast is next. Of course, we're live here every Friday night. The website for this show is theageoftransitions.com. So go to theageoftransitions.com. My name is Aaron Franz, and as always, I will leave you by saying, Seeker, seek on.
The age of transition.
Sorry, you're clear now.
Pick up your iPads, your cell phones, and have me and listen to Uncle the Podcast. Watch out. If you're sitting down for this, or if you're standing up, you better get ready for this, because it's going to hit the eardrums. Uncle the Podcast.
You are listening to Uncle the Broadcast. My name is Aaron. I'm the nephew-in-law. Here with me is the star of the show, Uncle.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. 210 is tonight. 210.
The 210th episode of Uncle.
Of this Uncle the Broadcast.
That's right.
I believe right now we have a guest on the line.
We do, yeah.
Rocky Balboa from Philadelphia, I think. What's this guy's name?
The Italian Stallion.
Italian Stallion. How you doing over there?
Yeah, straight out of Cambridge, Ohio.
Yeah, I thought that's what
This of course, is my good friend Rocky Jones.
Rocky Jones.
Host of the Pattern Stalker podcast.
Oh.
Always confused with Rocky Balboa, of course.
I know. That's
yes.
Always. I thought I was really having a good guest tonight. I thought we were going to talk about a guy that was really on the show. The first time it'd be a first words record for a guest finally get on the show. Of course, that I'm waiting for.
Oh, Sly Stallone was on
Sly
here.
Stallone.
We're working on him. He'll be here.
I thought this was him.
just a look-alike, Uncle.
What's these pictures? I don't see his pictures.
But Rocky, it's great to have you here, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Now, Uncle, I have not given the Pattern Stalker podcast. I haven't loaded it on your phone yet. That's because you have a new phone.
Right, I know, but I hit it. I already got it from your son. I'm ahead of you, bub. He's working ahead of me.
You mean you got all the apps loaded?
No, I got this whole thing that you set up on the New Year's Revolution.
Oh,
it's already on it, but I don't know how you get that. How do you get that other one on?
Ah, yes.
I got that on it.
We'll get all the apps on there, and of course, when we have the podcast app on, I think one of the first podcasts we're going to have to load up is Pattern Stalker, so you can hear Rocky's show.
Oh well, then
we'll do that.
You'll have to get it on. It's in my room. You can work on that.
But in the meantime, I mean, it's I was telling Rocky in the messages like on Instagram, but before the show, it's like it is a heavy show. It's a serious show. Rocky gets into his history and he's interviewing his mom, but it's good. It's a really good thing. And the previous hour, I know the audience in the chat room was really getting into it. A lot of psycho analyzing and
yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna let the guest take over. Go ahead, you're the guest. You can take over. I'll listen.
Take it away. Tell it what's going on, Rocky. What's going on here?
Okay, well, all right. So, where should I start? Should I talk about me? Who am I? Should I talk about the podcast? What do you
yeah. Well, how about we do start from the start? Who is Rocky? Who are we talking to here?
Yeah. Okay. So I am Rocky Jones. That is my real name. It's not a nickname. I was named after my uncle Rocky, who that is his nickname, but his real name is Victor. And I'm born and raised in down in the boonies in southeastern Ohio, real close to the border of West Virginia, down in Wheeling, West Virginia. And I was born early 80s. I live currently in Milwaukee. I went to art school. That's how Franz and I know each other. Well, I don't know. Franz, do you go by Franz anymore, or is it now Aaron?
That's a story in and of itself. Like
his young years is that one, the first one, and the older years is the other one.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. All my old friends like you call me Franz, and honestly, I prefer that. But I've kind of become Aaron to most people.
The grown-ups, the grown-up man. The grown-up name. That's the grown-up name. The baby name is what you would say.
I like the baby name. I don't know.
Well, that's what you call it. No, my nickname was Ippy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Take
yeah.
that.
Uncle's got his own cool nickname.
So since it's during the Uncle Hour, first of all, you guys can still call in. But secondly, I got another curiosity here. I'm wondering if the Rocky Jones name has anything to do with the TV series from the 1950s. I'm sure.
Space Ranger. No, I don't think so. No, I found that out like later on. But no, it was no affiliation that I'm aware of. No.
Well, there was also a political activist named Rocky Jones, apparently, who died in 2013. There's actually been a bunch of, I knew a musician in New Jersey named Rocky Jones, and that was his legal name as well. I don't think he ever became famous, but interesting drummer. It's just, it's fascinating to me, though. I'm wondering if, somehow that name was not just because of your uncle, but maybe from the TV series, if that was ever like an influence on anybody to assign you that name.
Oh, well, so the story that I know is my uncle got the nickname from rocking in the rocking chair a lot when he was a kid. So they would just call him Rocky. And my mom had told me that she was toying with the name Brock originally. And then my grandmother said, let's call him Rocky. So they went with Rocky. So I'd have to find out if my grandmother was a fan of the old Rocky Jones Space Ranger or sort of influence there, maybe subconsciously or something.
Well,
it could be possible.
Great possibility is you could have been named after, guess who, Rocky Balboa, because popular movie series at the time you were born.
Yes.
There's a couple of kids about your age that got the Rocky name.
That's true.
Totally.
Yeah,
okay, I just thought I would check to see if there was a pop culture meaning behind it.
It's funny about that name because I specifically remember an event where my family, like they tease you. The way they show you they love you is just by teasing you, right? And they would have me believing that Rocky Balboa was actually me. So I remember distinctly a time when I was watching the movie, and I don't know how this even makes logical sense, but they had me convinced that was me because that was my name. So I don't know how, I can still remember that though. I can remember like that's me, and I would feel like how he felt like when he was getting beat up, and like all those emotions. It was weird.
Well, and let's not forget that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, his father Rocky Johnson, was a popular wrestler also around the time.
That's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, Rocky and Bullwinkle, that was around that time too.
Well, that was way before any of our times, but
that was a cartoon.
It was a great cartoon.
That was the one you're talking about. I know that one.
Yeah,
I was one of them.
Yeah, that was about your time.
That was my time. I know that one.
You used to watch that cartoon? Boris and Natasha.
Boris and Natasha. They were going at each other.
Yeah.
And they were getting mad, and they had the other two saying, "Boogie, what are we gonna do?" And they were trying to figure out what they wanted to do with them.
Classic Cold War era villains.
Yeah, villains.
Yeah, right. Watch me pull a rabbit out of my head.
Yeah.
Now I was just gonna say that in the chat over at Twitch, because we're live streaming this video to Twitch and YouTube and Periscope, as well as going out on Ochelli.com every Friday night. They're saying, this is from Lucum, this over there. He said that, loved the interview with Rocky. Sounds like a guy who's been on the same track as I have for years. And then we've got Ray in Australia there too. He said, agreed. So
awesome.
People enjoyed that first hour there.
Awesome.
Yeah?
That's great.
See, you get him on my hours. It ain't going your hours. You get him on my hours.
Rocky, you're in the Uncle Hour now, so I mean, that first hour is just a warm up. So this is the real deal now. Realer than real deal Holyfield. So you better be like Rocky Balboa. This is gonna be the gloves are still on, but I don't know how much longer that's gonna happen.
Yeah, now you're rocking, Rocky.
I want to see how good he is in the ring. How are you good in the ring?
He sounds bum.
Bum? What that man is doing that bum? Trying to hit that damn man.
Women weaken knees.
Yeah, man.
Weaken legs.
Yeah, that's the old
That's what it is.
Yeah. A little bit of Gnostic cult advice there from Mickey. Goes a long way for Rocky.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're having fun. We always do in the Uncle Hour. Things get a little wacky.
Yeah.
Uncle, are you excited about the Pattern Stalker podcast or what? I mean, this is like a primer
well,
here.
I like to see the action of all this stuff coming out.
We will.
He's the guest. Let him do his story. I'm waiting here.
Okay.
Do your story.
All right. Okay. Don't hurt me.
We can't wait.
You had your first hour.
I had my hour. I got to just stop right now. I got to stop.
Yeah, I know.
Let's see here. All right. So, grew up in Southeast Ohio. Went to college with art school in Columbus, Ohio. That's where I met Franz at. And we were roommates for a few years there. And my day job, after art school, I got into working for Abercrombie. That's where I met Franz's wife at, Melissa. And I'm a textile designer. And my actual job now as an art director for I work for this large corporate fashion retailer here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So my job now is, again, I'm an art director. I oversee the men's and the active division for this company. And my side hustle is I'm a life coach. And I studied that, cognitive behavioral coaching as well. And my goal is to make that my full-time thing. I think the podcast very much plays into that. It's my journey of becoming, awake, really, just self-discovery and trying to break the patterns of generational trauma. My first episode the first series really is focused on my family. As I was doing learning about myself and certain things that was kind of plaguing me, I would say, with like perfectionism and procrastination. I think a lot of people to some degree experience, either some depression or anxiety and all of the above. And, I was had my first kid. I'm 39 years old now, but I had my first child. He's 6 now. So at the age of 33. And, there was kind of like a perfect storm for when this all came about, because I was learning at the time about entrepreneurship, and I was getting really interested in trying to break out and do something on my own. I felt like although I really enjoy the job that I do currently, I was just lacking that fulfillment, just trying to find some meaning in my work. And while that was going on, started really like learning a lot about what I was good at and what I needed to improve upon through the whole entrepreneurship. So learning about that, and then my dad had been diagnosed cancer. He had a brain tumor, and this was probably about 3 years before he had actually passed. So everything was kind of leading up to this event, which kind of became the catalyst for me having a moment of, clarity or realization. Like I've got to do something different. Like something's got to change, because I don't want to pass down these things on, onto my son. And I have a second son now too, so I don't want to pass this down to my kids. So started learning, started going deeper. Did this workshop that was it was entrepreneurship, but it was taught in with a trauma and attachment informed approach. So I started learning. I learned about attachment theory, and that was just a game changer for me. Started to understand a lot of these behaviors. It started giving me answers to why I was afraid to do things, and certain things I wasn't. What was, sort of at the root, of like some of my suffering, and this offered like a pretty good explanation, or at least a really good starting point. So that's kind of how it sort of really started. And I kind of learned through the process that in order to sort of combat it, like you have to you just have to do the work. Like not only just understanding that, like that's not enough. Like you have to retrain your nervous system. You know, it's a show, don't tell. So you have to in some ways it's kind of like exposure therapy. You have to kind of like lean into the things that you're avoiding, or those things that are triggering you, and sort of start questioning, why is this, upsetting me, or why am I getting so upset if I'm driving on the road and somebody cuts me off and I'm like so angry, irate, where is that coming from? Do you know what I mean?
Know
the shows,
know thyself, right?
Yeah. Socrates. Yeah. Know thyself. Yeah.
That's what it's about, Uncle. What do you say to that?
He's got some life there.
You're into this, right?
Doing this kind of talking.
This is something you can sink your teeth into.
He'll get into this. He'll start getting into this now, and then now you're gonna be one of my customers to be calling. So now that you've been the first call, you'll be calling, and we've got a name for Sidekick here that he does. Name the tune, and then you'll be called out for a shout out.
There we go. Yes, absolutely.
So that you'll be into that match.
We're encouraging social media interaction, and of course, we are taking calls on this Friday night, as we always do. So if you want to call in and join our conversation with Rocky, the number's 319-527-5016. You can also come in through Skype. You can find Chuck at charles.ocelli. Send him a message on Skype, charles.ocelli, or call 319-527-5016, and you can join the party that is Uncle the Podcast tonight. We're just having fun, just like every Friday, Uncle.
No, somebody's on?
Yeah, we're all here.
Zoot. I heard Zoot.
Yeah, the computer makes noises here, and
that computer is saying Zoot. I just heard it.
Zoot Seat Riot. Throw back a bottle of beer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hey, where's our samples on here? Sidekick?
Our samples? Where's
our samples?
Yeah, Uncle's upset because we don't have any dollar store beers to review.
I'm going to tell you this, everybody. He's been slacking on them.
Yeah.
He's really been slacking on them.
No dollar store beer tonight.
No dollar beer store. No one just... Last 2 nights? 3 nights? Before the New Year.
It's been a few shows, yeah.
It was when after the New Year's it stopped.
They'll be back. Oh, we're getting a lot of action here at looks like the Twitch chat. Let's see here. You'll get into this, Aaron.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Hey, they're talking about the dollar samples. Yeah. So they're excited about your dollar samples.
See, that's what I'm talking about. These guys in the chat room wants to have to hear, but you're slacking there.
Rocky, do you have beer at any dollar stores out where you're at, or no?
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 I don't know. I don't know if we do or not. I always go to the CVS on the corner here, and they have a good selection of beer. Well, not like a good selection of beer, but they have a really good selection of liquor. They have an okay selection of beer.
Because we do the test 1 to 10. So if one day we want to come back on our show, do a test for it. So I'm just letting you know.
Maybe we'll do a special alcohol drinking or a certain beer or we'd like to go to the dollar store and review whatever we find in there.
Yeah.
But we can set something special up too. We do that with guests sometimes.
We could try to do, Franz, because Mark Borchardt lives literally like a mile from me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. COVID, man.
I saw him coming out of his place. Yeah. I see him all the time at the local coffee shop, but nice. I saw him walking out of his place. I'm like, holy shit, that's where he lives. Like, it's literally less than a mile from me.
Now for listeners who are not aware who Mark Borchardt is, it's the documentary from, I want to say, about the year 2000, and it won an award at one of those film festivals like Cannes or something. But it's a documentary called American Movie, and it's about these guys in Wisconsin who are making a horror film, and Mark is the main character. He's the director, writer, and he is a character and a half. He is hilarious, and I guess he's your neighbor now.
Yeah, dude. It is like a dream come true.
Yeah, is it ever?
It is awesome, man. Like, I don't think I've got like I've seen famous people before, but like I haven't got like nervous around famous people before. But Mark Borchardt definitely makes you like nervous.
Yeah, you get starstruck. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, starstruck, man. It's insane. That is so awesome.
It can't be called Coven because Coven sounds too much like oven, man. Uncle, we got to watch that movie sometime. I bet you would get a kick out of that movie. You would like that. I know you would.
Where's it at? Yeah. Was it on?
We could find it on some streaming thing if we can't find it on Netflix or anything. I don't think it's on Netflix. It used to be, I think, years ago.
If it was, I would have been watching it if I knew what the name of it was.
American movie. Yeah.
I've been looking for something to watch. I have nothing to watch.
We should watch that.
Something. So
definitely
that's on there. I'll look for it.
Yeah, Rocky. You need to get a hold of him and like bring him onto your show and on the Uncle show, and he needs to make an appearance. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I think we'd have a better shot at getting him on your show because my show, he'd be like, "What the fuck is this?" Psychoanalyze me.
Yeah, you should. That would be pretty good. I feel like he did a bit of that even in American Movie. They were doing a bit of that. So I mean, any good documentary is going to get into that. But
because his like Mike, his like best friend, he was talking about his like drug use and stuff like that. Yeah, they did kind of touch on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it gets pretty serious, really. And there's the alcoholism, and of course, I mean, the whole Coven horror movie that he was working on was based off of his experiences in the program, that being AA. So he's taking the concept of AA and turning it into the idea that it's like this coven. It's like a witch's coven. And then he bases the whole movie around that concept. And it's quite literally, they're in AA in that movie, in the movie Coven.
Yeah.
Coven.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so we're getting demands from the Twitch chat. It says, Uncle, talk inauguration and new president executive orders that you like. So Biden just came in. He's changing things around.
He's doing it much, much better. Crack room.
Much
better.
Not just a little better?
No, doing it much better.
Huh.
Because he's got, all he's trying to do now is just getting his people together. He's putting them together. And it's taken a little time, I can understand. But in about, say, a month or two, you'll have them all ready. I'd say about that time.
What's gonna be ready? It's all gonna be ready?
His set of people.
Oh, okay.
The set of people he's setting in there.
Oh, okay. His cabinet's gonna
be cabinet's gonna be completed.
Okay.
I'd say given to by March or February, March, he'll be done.
Then everybody's gonna be settled in. Start getting the hard work done.
And
what's so hard to understand?
He's already signed. Have you noticed, Chuck and everybody there? He's already signed papers for this COVID stuff. He's already signed it. He's got them rolling. He's got them rolling off the.
He was waving an entire book, and he was saying science.
Science was writing it all up, and me and Fonz are the next two to get our shots in. After Nana, by the way.
Eagerly awaiting them.
So we are gonna get them when she gets hers. Then me and you go.
Science.
Get the shots.
He was waving a science textbook, 7th grade science textbook.
Yeah.
Saying science over and over again.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah, he was constantly writing. I mean,
Thomas Dolby. He was doing a Thomas Dolby impersonation, is what it was.
Oh.
Science! That's our new president, Thomas Dolby.
The guy knows what he's doing. I am not gonna be. But at least he's doing something. It's not like this other idiot didn't know what he was doing.
How about our guest, Rocky? Are you excited about what's going on in Washington, D.C. or what? How do you feel?
About that?
We want to know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm dabble too much in politics, man.
I thought this was crazy.
I would say, man, I don't know. Like, yes, I definitely, I mean, I voted, yes, I voted for Biden. I think I have a very interesting, I guess, perspective, because where I grew up at, most of the people where I'm from is, it's a very rural area. There, I had a lot of family there in coal mines, and my dad was actually worked in the coal mines for 10 years there. And a couple of my uncles worked there until retirement. So, but my mom and dad, they've always been Democratic and always voted that way. So pretty liberal. But most of everybody else around me, I'm conservative. So a lot of them back home, they vote, Republican every time. So I think I've learned that in order to sort of have like constructive conversations, like you've got to kind of lead with empathy. You got to kind of understand, where they're coming from. And I think for us to kind of really like unite, I think it's just really kind of understanding what's underneath of, the hatred, or I don't know, like some of the ignorance, I guess, that happens, or some of the tribalism and things like that. You know what I mean? So I try to like just understand that and try not to judge it, and
Sure.
And invite sort of conversations that way. So I would say, as I've gotten past few years, I'm definitely more moderate in my viewpoints. I mean, I'm definitely liberal. Like I care deeply about people at the core. So, and I also know that, again, in order for me to sort of continue growing as a human, like I need to continue seeking out people who have different viewpoints that differ than me, so I can just learn and understand, and then almost just be I don't know, like a mediator at times, I guess. So, but yes, but for the sake of like what's happening in the country, yeah, I'm all for science. And I think where I do get hung up at, because I do think there's a lot of truth that, everybody, there's an agenda, right? Everything, and, just from the system standpoint, the economy is, it's capitalism, right? So everything is being influenced or dictated, by a lot of the bigger companies and things like that. So you know what I mean? Like does that make sense? Like it's hard to sort of like, it's hard to go full on, like I support like this, because you also know that there's motives, and they might not always be, the way they're being portrayed to you might be like what you want to hear, but in actuality, there's other things that are probably going on, you know what I mean? So, so with that being said, I just don't get too informed, I guess. I don't spend a lot of time in that. I guess I try to spend a bit more time on the ground level, and I don't know, try to hear people, listen, and not be too influenced, I guess, by media, I guess, right?
Yeah. Well, there's, I mean, special interests are a real thing, and they're everywhere. That's what you're talking about. Absolutely, that's true. Uncle, what do you got there?
Oh, I was going White Dog's back now. I was excited with this election because of one thing that he had his roommate. Finally, we got a woman that's a vice presidency.
There we go.
I mean, this blew my mind. I mean, this is what I was waiting to see got to happen. No other person would ever put a woman in for her ticket. But when I heard that she got on there, that's what we've been waiting for.
It happened.
How do you like that?
How do you like me now?
How do you like I mean, that was exciting to me. I thought it was exciting because I think woman has got something to say. And on top of that, the woman she was, that's a first too.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, a woman, black woman, people of color, advancement of
very interesting.
Okay, yeah, sure, we can get on board.
I sort of got down. Very interesting.
Yeah.
And she was, and you know where she's from? Right here in Los Angeles.
Yes.
She was from Los Angeles here.
Yes.
And now she's a vice president.
She made it.
She made it through there.
There we go.
And that really got me.
We just made history.
Yeah, we made history.
I mean, this is everybody. This is.
What do you think about that, Chuck?
Yeah, Chuck. What
do you think?
What
about
say
that?
you?
What do you say about that?
Got mixed feelings about the prosecutor lady being the vice president. Not very progressive, although they tried to say she was, a radical leftist and all that. It's good that little girls can see that maybe they can actually someday get to a position of power. That's good. And it's good that, it's not always old white men that are in the office. But she would not be my pick. I don't dig how she handled people, when it comes to marijuana convictions.
Oh, that open foot in here now.
Crime bill, yeah.
Crime bill stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally a prosecutor, from the broken system. I'm not super enthused about her, but stay tuned. She'll be president soon.
So that's your prediction, huh, Chuck?
That's his. Yeah. That's his side.
Wow, that's interesting. Oh.
Well, it's something to understand. Well, people got different opinions. I can take that.
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll take it. Yeah. Let's see here. What you think about that, Chuck? Okay, Uncle. What about second gentleman? Yeah, that's right. That means Harris's husband. That's his title that he's taking. Second gentleman. I think that's it. Have you heard that one, Uncle?
What is this one?
Kamala Harris's husband. I can't remember his name, but he's going. So instead of like second lady, it'd be second gentleman. And first lady is the wife of the president. Second lady is wife of the vice president. This is second gentleman, the husband of the vice president.
Yeah, well, that is different. I hear what you're saying. Right.
Yeah.
That a little some confusing. You have to switch it around, but it's really interesting. I gotta say.
Switch it up.
Yeah.
Throw him a curveball.
Yeah.
Spitball some ideas.
Hey, if they do the job that we asked them to do, I'm not complaining.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
I'm not complaining. If they do what we told them to do in that house.
We've got some suggestions.
Pass inspections, pass these shots, putting the shots into people's arms.
Mm-hmm. Put shots in people's arms.
My sister, she's going absolutely bananas.
When
am I getting my shot? When am I going to get my shot?
She is a vaccination enthusiast.
Yes, and it's coming soon, but this is my say.
Yeah, there you go.
That's just word on that.
Julia Gillard was deputy prime minister before ousting Kevin Rudd to become Australia's first female prime minister. Oh, yeah, there you go. So there's some Australian history there from Ray in the Twitch chat room. So there you go. We're learning all about the world tonight.
So, do we got anybody from Ireland?
Do we have anyone from Ireland?
Anybody on the island?
Is there anybody there, Chuck, from Ireland?
Call and
possibly.
Give me a call.
Well, let's take a look at the internationals. At the moment, we have the Ukraine, we have France, we have the UK, we have Sydney, Australia, another Australia. We have, let's see, everybody else is America, it looks like. Washington, Georgia, California, Las Vegas. Let's see, Washington again, Minnesota, Michigan, Texas. And meanwhile, a lot of people did go over to Twitch. I have no idea who's over there.
Oh.
Yeah.
They were over Twitch.
A few of the same people that are in the Ocelli.com chat room, they're quite the busy beavers there and dancing about all over the internet. They're doing like an internet tap dance. Like let's do a jig here. Let's do a little.
Where's my buddy Ed? Is he on the air?
Yeah, Ed. Well,
where is Eddie boy? I know that boy well.
He'll call in any second now. Rocky, what's happening?
Yeah.
What's happening?
I'm still here. I'm just soaking it in. I'm like enjoying just the back and forth between you guys.
Why don't you do an electric slide on over to Instagram and get some kind of weird chat thing going on in that?
Yeah.
How about that for a suggestion? You know what I mean? We're doing internet social media dances on Uncle the Podcast tonight.
Oh, that reminds me. Are you guys also live video on Twitter right now too?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm twitting. We're twitting.
We are twitting as we speak.
I haven't had lately Twitter. This past week I haven't had much twitting to tell them some things. You guys showing me with the phone. I went to twitting. I didn't get any this week. That's a first.
Oh, yeah. I got texted a question about the Name That Tune game. Has anybody won lately?
Oh.
The last one, what was the last one? I named the winner of the last one. I'm trying to recall who it was that won. I can't even remember what the song was, but we did mention the winner. It's been a little while since we've had one of those because I haven't been posting much to the Instagram. But
the last one I remember you mentioning was Creative Accidents one, right?
Yeah, he won.
That might have been the last one.
That was the last one.
Yeah, it was. Oh, yeah, that's right. It was that oldies song, which I don't even remember the title of the song now.
Yeah, he was the last one on it.
Yeah, it's.
Get our friend there.
Oh, I know the name of the song.
Get our friend on there. He'll be on this too. I meant to ask him.
Who's that, Uncle?
I guess.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna tell him.
Rocky, do you know of the Name That Tune song that we like to play around with on the podcast? You know that?
Yeah, like I've guessed one of them. I think it was you. It was like a Slayer, Rain and Blood. It was a while. It was a while ago.
Keep listening. Keep listening. You might get called for a shout out.
Yeah, the fabulous prize is a shout out.
This guy here, sidekick does it.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Well, that was an easy guess because Franz used to play like a handful of songs back in college, and it was either Slayer or like, Manowar. That was probably in there.
There is
Andrew WK. I think you might have played.
I know a couple. I know a couple of those on the guitar. Yeah, I still know these songs, by the way, and a couple new ones.
I meant to tell you. I meant to tell everybody. I forgot. You know this one that I got on my phone now. The one new that we can get to where the ex-vice president was on. I saw him finally on Instagram.
Mike Pence?
No. The one that's now not no president.
Donald Trump.
He was talking. He was acting like a music man. You should see this sidekick. You should see what's on there.
He was performing.
Yes, he was. He was performing the Black Leopard. What the heck is this? This was him.
Oh, is he doing vocal warm-ups?
Vocal warm-ups.
Red Leather, Yellow Leather by Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is going action. You guys got to listen to that. Fellas on that?
Red leather, yellow
he was
leather.
Absolutely going bananas.
The best leather.
That's why he wasn't shown. That's why you couldn't. That's why he wouldn't open up the thing and show people. But now I know that was the reason because he stormed with the music.
Yeah.
I said, what this? Def Leppard. He was playing Def Leppard.
Def Leppard?
He was the guy slinging.
Rock of Ages?
Pour some sugar on me.
Or one of them hot bar music bands you like. With ZZ
ZZ Top?
No. Z Z
Was
something.
it was
one of your groups.
Striper?
Crazy about a sharp dressed man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was completely in the video. I mean, in the video, people.
It was probably YMCA.
No, it wasn't.
That's his favorite song.
It wasn't.
He went out. He went out as president with that song. He gave his little speech at the White House before he left. He's like, "We'll be back in some form. It's been my pleasure and honor to be your president. Bye-bye." And then it goes, dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun.
I didn't hear that.
You know, there's a series. There's whole series of videos out there where they took and remixed Donald Trump singing all kinds of stuff like Motley Crue and
That's exactly what I'm saying.
AC/DC and all that stuff on YouTube.
That's
I don't know
what
if
I
you've
was
seen that.
talking about.
That's what
what
I'm
you're
saying.
saying. That's
Okay.
what I was saying. I saw all of that. That's what I'm
it's
talking
funny.
about. It was
I
so
don't-
funny. I said, "Whoa."
I don't know how you've seen all of it because there's literally like 80, 90 of these things out there.
Well,
that
I
found.
saw a few once I got it on my phone. See, once I got it on my phone with little help, I tuned it in and I saw it. I said, "What the heck is he doing now? This guy's a rock band."
It came-
Ex-president of the United States was doing this. No wonder why he was scared and not showing people in the People's Republican and stuff.
People's Republic of
I mean,
China.
that was no wonder he was playing his music. For Pete's sakes. Now you know what he was doing.
I don't want to ruin it for you, Uncle, but you know, people take his words and cut them together because I saw him singing Black Sabbath's War Pigs.
But that's it. That's it.
Because people just cut together different parts of his speeches and then used auto-tune to make it kind of work. And you haven't seen this yet, Aaron?
I don't recall it. No, I
You
don't think
haven't
so.
sing all this?
Oh my God! Yeah,
Oh,
okay,
put
you
on-
got
I'm
to
gonna show
see
you
it
on my
because-
phone. I'll show you on my phone.
Sounds
It was-
important.
I mean, it was like a dingbat playing this music. I said, wait a minute, this ain't the original guy playing the music.
No, it's simultaneously hilarious and
Yeah.
depressing. Just so you know.
Exactly.
And by the
It's
way,
on
that
YouTube.
version of Raining Blood that you just brought up, is it this one?
Oh, we're listening. Wait,
What was it?
we're waiting with bated breath. Is it the?
Can
I can't hear that. No,
I
are you
can't
playing
hear
that
that.
weird sort of like electronic thing? That. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah. That's the weird electronic one that I made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one? Okay. No, I was just checking to see if that was the one that you were talking about on the Name That Tune. But no, you've got to see this series of stuff. They got AC/DC. They got them doing
Yeah.
everything. You
Yeah,
name it.
I had to look twice to make sure it was him. After watching the music, and I know the music. I know my music. Man, when I saw him play it, though, what kind of dumb boy is he doing that?
Oh, it's hilarious.
It is very
Rolls
funny.
gathered
It's
in
very
their
funny.
masses. It's just, I'm telling you, dude. If you're not holding your head in your hand by the time you're done watching a couple of them,
You gotta
I don't know you.
tune it. You gotta turn on your phone and you gotta watch it. You gotta
All right.
listen to this.
All right,
I mean,
all right.
put the. I have.
All right.
I
Maybe
mean, that was crazy.
I'll have to look into that. I'll have to look into this.
see this.
It's even more bizarre than the song choices of his, DJ who was, I don't know, stuck with his Time Life edition of Rock of the 70s or whatever, that he just can't get, anything else on his iPod. That was playing all those different songs that every artist pretty much basically told him, please stop.
They did. They did.
Oh, a bunch of people. Bruce Springsteen was mad at him. I can't even think of who else, but I mean, a whole bunch of people were like,
John Fogerty, right?
John Fogerty.
John Fogerty was real angry.
Oh yeah. He played his song. Yeah, Big
that's
Fogerty.
right.
Yeah.
Everybody was upset.
Yeah. Trying to teach her, thinking he was gonna be an artist after he's came done this, and they're saying, well, you got a long way to go to be an artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a good question for Rocky as we come down to the last 12 minutes or so here is, even though he said he wasn't very much into politics and not tuned into it, I mean, does he have any views on the Trump years of America here, the Trump era?
Trump years.
Oh,
Lucky, do you have any?
well, yeah.
Go
Let's
ahead.
see here.
Tell me.
Well, I can't remember who it was. I watched the video ages ago. It might have been Simon Sinek. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Simon Sinek before. He did this TED Talk called "Start with Why," and it was a massive thing because he basically had a diagnosis like a lot of companies like Apple who are really successful. Like, what do they do and how they do it, and like why is it so successful, right? So he did a commentary, I think, talking about Trump when he first got elected. And one thing that he said that I was like, yes, I agree with that. Is he's like, Trump is just a reflection of us. I think America as a whole, we I don't know, we subscribe to kind of ridiculousness, like reality TV and things like that. And I think Trump was just very much like, a manifestation of those sort of kind of ideals or distractions or whatnot, and an entertainer. Because if you kind of look at it objectively, like Trump could be like quite funny. Like it's so ridiculous that it's funny.
Yeah.
And if you just take away like the actual I don't know, the realities of what his power is, which is not funny. But if you just look at it, like just the ridiculousness of it, like it's quite funny. So I'm glad he's out of there because I think that the long-term effect is just there's just no sort of, I don't know if there's ever trust in government to begin with, but there's even more or less of it now. I think there's just so much, polarization that's just happened. That's, even like with fake news, like everything becomes like, like what can you believe? Like anything with media and stuff. So, I think in name of or for the sake of progress, like I'm so glad that he's out and we've got Biden and Harris in there. I think that's good for the steps forward, essentially. But I think it's not gonna do well unless we start having some conversations with people who disagree with us to try to understand why everybody's what happened to you. Everybody's hurting, right? So it's not us against you, we're all in this together. So I think, again, with Trump being in there, I think he really just added fuel to the fire of being a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, sort of like this turmoil between dividing us, right?
Yes. Very divisive.
Yeah, divisive, thank you. But I also think that I always try to like look at situation and try to find good in everything. I try to like look at it objectively, like what can I learn from this? So somebody like Trump, it definitely, there's a lot of good that's came from it in the way that people, when it came to like stuff with the racism and the movements that are happening there, like you saw people stand up and speak out, like same with women empowerment. There's a lot of good things that he became like a catalyst for. And again, not agreeing with what he's done or how he's went about it, but looking at what's the result or what has happened because of it, right? It's sort of like there's been a lot of like good things that have come from it. They pull together, It's so I guess that's kind of like a long-winded answer of kind of my views on it. I think it's I think there's just a lot of good things that have come from it as a country. But I also think that there's a lot of damage that's happened in the process.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. I want to add into the questions here, and this is actually directed at Uncle, but with about, say, 8 minutes left, Aaron, maybe you want to marshal your way through this, and they want to know in the chat room at Ocelli.com what Uncle thinks will happen to Q. But I would love to hear what Rocky has to say about that, and who knows, that might take up the rest of the time.
Uncle, what's going to happen to Q?
Who's Q?
Q is basically anybody you want them to be. So Just make up some fake thing, and what's going to happen to that fake person that you call Q, Uncle?
Well, Q needs more like get straightened up.
Exactly.
So he's getting in a stance of where he's getting straightened at this moment. He was going off curve of the last president passed, but now I think he's getting a little straighter.
Q is all straightened out
Q
now,
is
everybody.
straightened out now.
I mean,
it's a start of it going straight.
It's not
See, because he was on the curve when Trump was there. Trump, he was saying, "Oh, let's go play music." Bends that sucker this way.
Yeah, you know that sign on the road that's like tells you that there's all sorts of curves coming.
On the curves, that was
Trump. That was Q during Trump.
Trump going this way, and he was getting too much going this action. So we had to figure out, we have to get straighter. So when the new guy came, it's
Q is perfectly like a straight line.
It's coming straight line now.
It's like when you're on a desert road and you can see 50 miles out ahead of you. That's Q now.
Yeah.
There's no Q at the YMCA. There's no Q at the YMCA.
I did not hear that song on the thing yet. I did not hear that one. But I heard all the other ones, but not that one.
Yeah, Trump has played it quite a bit.
Not on the one that he put on his Instagram.
Yeah,
I didn't hear that one. That one I didn't hear yet.
There's enough of that in real life. Yeah, they didn't have to play that one again.
Well, I mean, but I heard the other ones. Oh, the Black Sabbath and all that mother he was playing.
Any thoughts on Q, Rocky, or what? Yes
Q?
or
no? Man, I don't. Q is just. Q has been a bad boy. Yes, Uncle was right. He needed straightened out, and he's gotten straightened out. I agree with Uncle. So he's in line now.
He's in straight line now because now we got a decent president would get things done.
Of course, Uncle's talking about shadow prez, which is the actual real truth of the reality is now that Trump is no longer ostensibly in power, so you think.
Yeah, that too.
According to Q, Biden is being controlled behind the scenes by Trump, who is actually in control.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was
exactly what's happening.
That's what I was trying to get to. That's what I was trying to get to. Yeah, what he said. What Sidekick said.
Oh.
I'm Castor Troy.
Well, that's what Sidekick said. That's what I was trying to say.
That's what's actually happening.
Yeah. It's like that.
There you go, audience. We're happy to inform you on this show. You're welcome. Now, Rocky, why don't you once again let the audience know about your show and anywhere they can find you online before we call it a night here on Uncle the Broadcast?
Oh, and
yes, definitely. All right, so the podcast is called Pattern Stalker. It's who am I and how the hell did I get here? So it's a show about self-discovery and breaking the patterns of generational trauma. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. I'm on Spotify, and also you can find me on Simplecast. That is Pattern-Stalker Simplecast.
All right. Nice. All right. Well, it was great to have you here.
Yeah.
So much fun. Maybe I might have to have you back. I had a lot of fun talking to you.
We'll have him back.
Yeah, absolutely.
He'll have us back. I mean, he'll want to come back.
You had fun too, right?
Oh, yeah, I had fun.
Yeah.
I like a guy, like I said, I like my guests to talk how they are and go from there. And I sort of like his ideas.
Great ideas. Ideas. Yeah.
We'll have you back again there, Rocky.
Awesome. I look forward to it. Yeah, thank you all so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and
another time we're gonna send you some cards.
We will.
We'll get this guy to hurry up and send them. You're gonna get some. Rick was gonna get them. You're gonna send them out.
Oh yeah, I will. I'll do that. You're on the list, Rocky.
Yeah, you're on the list to get some.
Oh yes.
And of course,
remember the New Year's revolution that I do.
Yes, remember it. Write it on the calendar.
Right on the calendar.
New Year's Eve every year.
There
you go. You're invited.
You're invited for that.
And then our website is unclethepodcast.com. We're at Uncle Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. The show is live every Friday on. Yeah, well, we're
on that Quicks that I'm supposed to be getting on.
We're on there.
Well, I'm not doing it yet.
Every Friday, Ocelli.com. We'll be back next week. So, yeah. And I might maybe do something on Twitch after the show. I don't know. I did last week. It was a lot of fun. Maybe. So, stick around there. Maybe. If not, we'll do some more fun extra Twitch stuff at some point. That's been a lot of fun.
We do a lot of live things that he does, too.
We do.
Live things at the house here.
We're doing more live things.
Live things. So,
a lot of
listen for that.
Stay tuned, everybody.
And
Uncle, why don't you bring us home here? This is the end of the show.
that's it. Hold on. Bye-bye. See you next week. Bye-bye.